This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program News Analysis, now we bring you a discussion on India-France cooperation. The participants are Professor R.K. Jain, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and K.V. Prasad, Associate Editor, The Tribune.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in France. In fact, it's one of the most successful trips in recent times when not only have deals in the strategic areas, both in defense and nuclear, but also in the new forays of space, and a wider section of Make in India campaign, whether it's the skill development and other issues. And today he visited the factory of Airbus, and then of course as other programs before he moves on to Germany. Professor Jain, first and foremost, India and France have a very long-standing relationship, and in fact in terms of nuclear, I think we had one of the older relationship with France, and also the first country which helped us with which we have a nuclear agreement post in civil nuclear agreement that India got across. But to look at the bigger picture that emerges from this two-day visit, we'll discuss as we go along. How do you see the visit in per se?
I think it's very important that Prime Minister Modi chose France as his first destination on his first trip to Europe since he assumed the Prime Ministership. France has been a very reliable partner ever since, not only in nuclear and space exploration, but I think amongst the three strategic partnerships that we have in Europe with France, Germany and the UK, there is a consensus that the partnership with France has been one of the most productive ones. And I think there is also a great geopolitical similarity in terms of major objectives of Indian foreign policy, like our quest for permanent membership of the UN Security Council, belief in a multipolar world, and greater recognition of the emerging power should play a more important role in world affairs. So overall, I think there is great synergy. Though, of course, I think on the economic front, our economic and trade relations have been below potential, and we have not been able to cross the threshold. I mean, we were just about 8 billion euros last year because the great focus has been on big deals, and somehow we have not been able to establish the appropriate linkages and synergies between the two countries to give a greater boost. But I think the change of leadership in India means that the policy paralysis of the UPA 2 regime is now over, and we can look forward to strengthening and increasing our cooperation with these countries to fulfill India's bigger objectives in the economic and foreign policy fields.
The big takeaway, which of course was highlighted by the Indian media, predictably so, was the 36 Rafale aircraft deal, which comes under government-to-government thing. And of course the government of India is dictated by the fact that the Indian Air Force needs its critical requirement. It's working on it. And the deal, of course, was being negotiated, so it's an aircraft which has been already down-selected by the Indian Air Force in terms of a component and technical evaluations, everything done through. But the manner in which it came through was probably a little bit dramatic in sense it came absolutely the last minute to the public knowledge, if I may put it that way. But nonetheless, it's a move in, and today the Defense Minister did maintain that this is a good deal that India has got, and also the fact that within the next 2 years, the induction should start taking place in the Indian Air Force. How do you see that vis-a-vis the issue which bound to ignite some kind of a debate in this country is the negotiations for Rafale per se have not moved to a logical conclusion, but yet we moved on another path because of the critical operational requirement.
There were two fundamental problems with the entire Rafale jet discussions with France over the past 3 years or so. One was, of course, the price issue. There were certain gray areas which we discovered later on which would have led to price escalations. Second, of course, were technical issues because the Dassault company, there is a limit beyond which the government cannot pressurize a private company. There were also issues about standing guarantee for the quality of the jet to be produced by the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. And I think we were also concerned a bit, though this was not mentioned in public debates, was about the likely delay. Like with the Scorpion submarine, there have been a number of delays. Why? I think this is not an ideal solution. It is at best a halfway solution in order to overcome the problems, the legal tangles with the tender. And by making it a government to government, we have avoided all possibilities for litigation. At the same time, we have kept the door open for negotiating for the purchase of the remaining aircraft which are needed, because now our Air Force is down to the level of the Pakistani Air Force and not the Chinese one. So while criticality defined this need, I think there are two possibilities. One, that negotiations proceed, and if private plus public players are involved for the local manufacture of the remaining jets, or We look at alternatives like the Sukhoi 30, or as we are trying with the Russians to accelerate the delivery of the fifth generation stealth aircraft. But at any rate, I think India also had to demonstrate our commitment to a process which had been dragged on, to demonstrate that India was serious, especially as we are now seeking transfer of defense technology and make in India with France as well as other countries.
The other, of course, important thing is the Jaitapur nuclear power plant issue. Once again bogged down because of some domestic issues, and one may say also the other aspects of it, the civil nuclear liability clauses that way. Now we again understand there is a significant movement that's likely to happen. How does one summarize that?
Well, with the nuclear power deal, there were two basic issues. One was the issue of nuclear liability, which has been to a large extent resolved, though there are certain pending issues which I think creative solutions will be found to that. But most significant issue was at what price we would get the per unit of electricity. Whereas the French were saying something like about 9 rupees plus, we were looking at something like 6 rupees plus. The solution which has been found in this visit has been that there is now an agreement between Areva and Larsen & Toubro for local manufacturing, which will bring down the cost and therefore in turn the cost of power which is going to be generated in India. And secondly, one further step forward has been taken because these things take time. These are highly technical and highly diverse issues. So a pre-engineering agreement with the Nuclear Power Corporation so that further progress can be made on this. So I think we're more or less on track. And as we go along, and this will also help make in India. And what is significant is not only for the plants which will be set up at Jaipur, but also there are potential for future export to other countries.
France is already supporting India's efforts in terms of energy, not just nuclear, but is also looking in the renewable energies. And it said India welcomed the target set by French companies aimed at developing 8 to 10 gigawatts of solar energy by 2022. And France is willing to support other renewable energies, wind, biomass. India is labeled as the third largest polluter, quote within quote, I want to use the word, because the Prime Minister earlier did mention the fact that we are not really the polluters, we also need solutions, and we need India's argument of cheaper technology being maybe available to fight this battle.
The present Modi government has sought a basic reorientation of our focus towards the issues of climate change. On the one hand, the Prime Minister recently emphasized the need for lifestyle changes in the West. Because the basic difference between the developed countries and the developing countries is that where it is a question of lifestyle with them, in our case, these are survival emissions. Secondly, without access to advanced technology, it will be very difficult for us in the long term to shift to renewable energies. And there's a very strong focus on increasing the solar power generation by 10 times. So access to Western technology would be useful. And France, apart from nuclear power, what we need is not state-of-the-art technology, but technology which can be relevant to Indian conditions so that it will contribute greatly for us to meet our emission targets.
Of course, when you mentioned of the fact of the development model, I think India has been constantly been in engagement on discussion. And the West talks of what kind of development model would India would like to adopt in terms of technology and growth. And I think that's a debate which never gets clinched.
No, I think the basic issue is that India is a large country and where about 400 million people don't have access to electricity. And poverty is also a great polluter. We have a very complex situation, and I think our stand has been correct on, common but differentiated responsibilities. And secondly, the question of that hydrocarbons are not going to provide a permanent solution. We have to gradually shift. So nuclear power, solar energy, wind power, these are all the kind of technologies that we are looking at. And there is no need for us to follow the Western path of industrialization. But at any rate, we have to understand we're a large country and there's a higher investment and we cannot easily shift to the more expensive technologies to take care of CFCs and other emissions. So I think we have the right approach and I'm not very hopeful that at the Paris COP meeting, later this year in December, that are we going to really reach, because the West, the developed world, has been failing in terms of providing technology and more importantly funds to facilitate transition to
So there is hope after China and the US struck a deal. You made a point of investments, of course, related to the nuclear, the civil and other energy issues. But this significantly, 2 days before this thing, we had a CEOs meeting in France, and that's very important because top companies from India and France and the CEOs were in a discussion as to what can be done to kind of kickstart the entire investment cycle. And if you really look in terms of investments, France is the 9th largest foreign direct investment provider in the country. 750 French companies are already operating big ones in India. And in terms of, I think it's something like net accumulate of 2.31 billion euros in terms of money, in terms of investment. What else can be done is the question, because that must have been discussed in Paris, because yesterday the joint statement did take note of the fact that the CEOs think, and also the Make in India concept, which is what is being dovetailed into the investment process.
The clear focus of the Modi government has been on certain flagship programs, revival of manufacturing, Make in India, and this is contingent on attracting foreign capital. I think there is a great degree of interest in the growth potential of India, that we are now scheduled to grow at a faster rate than even China, and the policy paralysis of the UPA regime is now over, so this new government means business. And you see, this is a pattern, when Modi went to the United States or other destinations, he has been having talks with the industry to increase their involvement. It is, and a key focus was, let's say, on defense technology. Now, would you be surprised that, we don't even make our own army boots? These are all imported. So there's a vast amount of technologies that we can use, and I think this one-to-one discussion of trying to create less red tape and faster clearance. So this one-to meeting with the CEOs, I think, can, over a period of time, some of these opportunities will mature, and I think it will help in fulfilling critical gaps in our various technologies. And it's part of our diversification as well, because the French have certain technologies which are useful for us. So I think it was a very purposeful meeting to that effect, to try to attract Western European CEOs to come and visit India and invest in India.
In fact, when you mentioned about the transfer of technology and the fact that production lines being opened in India, one of the criticism against Indian workforce has been the skill sets. The kind of skill sets required for high-end technology usage, and probably that is why the Make in India is also, with that goes the skill development issues that is now being talked about. And once again, all these figures in the 20-odd sectors that pacts were signed yesterday, 20 pacts were signed on nuclear energy. But space is an important component, because we also had counterterrorism, but space, because 50 years India and France partnership in space we are celebrating now.
Space has been a very important area of Indo-French collaboration, and
today Prime Minister visits CNES.
The impression I've gotten over my visits to France and talking to concerned people is that both in the area of nuclear technology and space research, the French have been very forthcoming. That whenever India made requests for collaboration or advice or research or inputs, the French have been ever willing.
In fact, Apple went on the French, riding the French rocket.
Ariane, yeah. And as a result of this, there is a great degree of synergy, interaction, mutual confidence which has been built over these decades. And now putting Mars as the cheapest mission that a developing country like India could do has demonstrated our capabilities. So I think we can look forward to, already demonstrated our technical capability and expertise, and I think we can look forward in the future to further advancing, as in Mars and other areas we have signed agreements for further collaboration with France.
Professor Jain, to one issue that, of course, people who like the people-to-people contact, the cultural relationship, we've heard about the French railways trying to, again, one of the best in the world in terms of their technical expertise, trying to do that. But we also have a regional Hindi conference that is being talked about, and India supporting France in holding that in Paris sometime later.
Well, insofar as people-to-people relations are concerned, though language is a problem, but Paris is one of the most favorite destinations for Indian tourists. Bollywood is a big thing, and you'd be surprised to know that in the Champs-Élysées you had this Hindi movie Devdas, which ran for over a year, right on a theater on the side of Champs-Élysées. I think there is a growth, though the number of students, Indian students in France, are much lower than those in the United States or Chinese students in France. But I think with the establishment of an Indian Cultural Center in Paris and so on, I think we can look forward, especially now with skill development and other areas, faster visa within 48 hours. For tourists who want to go. I think there is great potential in the relationship, and I think this will enlarge in the years to come. We have had a very fruitful strategic partnership with France since 1998. This is the only strategic partnership in Europe which meets twice a year at high senior levels. And I think this has facilitated over the years in establishing greater linkages, greater mutual confidence, and there is a lot more that we are doing in terms of counterterrorism, on consultation on various international, regional issues. And now again you have, for example, we're going to have joint exercises in the next month, and even in the coastal radar system that we are establishing in the Indian Ocean, French have come forward. So I think overall there is a great potential in the further development of our mutual relationship.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on India-France cooperation. The participants were Professor R.K. Jain, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and K.V. Prasad, Associate Editor, The Tribune. It came to you in the program News Analysis, produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website newsonair.nic.in. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.